US billionaire and successful businessman Donald Trump is trying to become the next US president. Of course, in order for him to accomplish that goal, he first has to become the presidential candidate of the Republican Party. The purpose of this fairly brief video is to explore various reasons for the simultaneous polarization and popularity that Mr. Trump has caused and continues to cause and continues to experience. The sources are various news items over the last several months, ever since he announced his presidential candidacy, Wikipedia, my own interpretations and opinions, a few or some books about the US history and culture, and even some of my high school lessons in Canada in terms of one vocabulary item. And at the start of this video, I have to make a disclaimer once again. I don't intend to insult Mr. Trump or to perform any kind of character assassination of him. I simply want to inform the possible viewers of this video about various possible reasons for Mr. Trump's controversial popularity. I have narrowed them down to 10. 1. So many American voters, like so many Western voters in general, Western meaning European, North American, Australian, and New Zealander, are simply fed up with politics and politicians as usual. You know, people who craft their statements and positions carefully so as to try to get as many supporters as possible, who try to offend no one or, at worst, a minimum number of people, who seek always to avoid outrageous or divisive or bigoted statements, and who, once elected, either break or water down many of their promises and accomplish fairly little substantial compared to their often lofty campaign promises. 2. He seems to believe that by speaking his mind, no matter how rudely or outrageously, he gets a maximum publicity exposure and therefore hopefully enough supporters to win first the Republican presidential candidacy and second, eventually, the US presidency. 3rd, because he's a billionaire, he can claim to be free from special interests and fundraising. He has probably enough money in cash, savings, and investments to self-finance his presidential campaign. 4, he can claim to be sufficiently old and experienced to be president because he will turn 70 in June 2016, and because he has worked as a diligent and usually successful businessman for well over 40 years, and he has still not retired. 5, Mr. Trump can claim to be a concerned, civic-minded American who wants to clean up the corrupt parts of the US political system and who is definitely not a career politician who has never had paid employment outside politics. 6, he appeals to the redneckish or intolerant attitudes of various lower and working class Americans, especially men, and even of some middle-class Americans. 7, Mr. Trump can argue that he is free from a slavish commitment to political correctness, because he is not afraid of openly expressing his opinions on the political or social issues, or of offending even millions of people in the process. 8, while Mr. Trump claims to be a Christian and belongs to the Presbyterian Church, he at least sometimes swears publicly, is now living with his 3rd wife, and often speaks rudely or impolitely about his opponents. Personally, I agree with Dr. Ben Carson, an opponent of Mr. Trump in the 2016 Republican presidential primaries, who criticized him early in the campaign for apparently or possibly lacking humility and fear of the Lord. Dr. Carson was granted gracious or humble enough to apologize for his remarks later. 9, Mr. Trump seems to be a 21st century nativist or WASP, that is, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant American. With his condemnation of illegal immigrants living in the United States, he's pledged to deport them, if elected president, and his recent proposal to temporarily ban Muslims from immigrating to the United States should he become the next US president. 10, and this is my last point. Mr. Trump seems to be an old macho man who likes sometimes poking fun at or even intentionally mocking women if it bolsters his ego or makes him more popular among other men or increases his publicity and media exposure.